Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to this Words of Wisdom Wednesday, where we take another look at leadership insights from the Bible. Now, whether you're a person of faith or not, the leadership lessons contained in these 66 books that comprise the Bible span over 6,000 years of human history, and it gives us some insights into the outcomes of good leadership, bad leadership, poor leadership, and great leadership, and the lessons that are applicable even today. Now, we've been looking at the life of Moses over the last several lessons in the book of Exodus. I want to back up a few chapters from where we are currently in our study, going through chapter by chapter and looking at different leadership lessons therein. And I want to point out a common theme that we see in the book of Exodus that has practical application in today's life. One of the lessons I've learned early on from my mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell, is that leaders are called to equip other people who will one day take their place. The pinnacle role of a leader is to replicate himself or herself in those that they are developing as leaders themselves, so that one day when that leader is no longer there, another leader can step in and continue leading an organization, leading a group, leading a family into future generations. We see that laid out in this scripture, and we see an interesting parallel that we can draw for today. And I want to jump into and back up just a few chapters to Exodus chapter 4, and I want to point a few things out I think will be beneficial as you are looking at your role as a mentor, as a leader. Exodus chapter 4, verses 14 through 17. Now, let me give you a little bit of the backstory in case you're joining us for the first time. Moses is living in the land of Midian. He was raised by Pharaoh and his daughter, having been adopted into the family of Pharaoh, murdered an Egyptian soldier, fled to avoid being killed, and now he's had this burning bush experience, and God is calling him to go back to Egypt to demand that Pharaoh release the children of Israel that he has enslaved to build his city and to allow them to go into the wilderness to worship God. Moses is having an inferiority argument with God, believing that he is not yet qualified to be a leader. And he's at the point in the conversation in Exodus 4, and you can go back and read it yourself, where he's questioning his ability to speak. God responds in verse 14 and says this, "What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if he were your mouth and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it." Now, I won't get into all of the detail of what we're talking about and all the different things that he's asking Moses to do, but there's a couple of interesting things there. Notice what God says. Moses is addressing a difficulty, a weakness he has. He's not an eloquent speaker. God comes back and replies, "What about your brother Aaron? I know he can speak well." And notice what God has already done. He's prompted Aaron to go to his brother so that together they can work as a team to accomplish what God has called them to do. Aaron coming in to be a mentor to Moses as an older brother, having an opportunity to lead by example. And that takes us to our first leadership insight today. Good leaders recognize the strengths and the weaknesses of others. Now, God had already recognized that Moses was not a man of eloquent speech. He was a great leader of people and was a very strong physical presence that we see from reading the scriptures of the Old Testament. However, Aaron was an eloquent speaker. He had the ability to speak with eloquence, with passion, but also with purpose. So what does God do? He pairs them together as a team, recognizing Moses has strengths in certain areas, Aaron has strengths in other areas that Moses didn't. So together, the combination of the two was stronger than the individuals leading by themselves. Now, the application for you as a leader is this. As a leader and as a mentor to those that you're leading, you need to learn to recognize the strengths of your people as well as their weaknesses and make assignments accordingly. You want to give people assignments where they can operate in the area of their strengths And if they have an area of weakness, then you want to complement that with other leaders and other support individuals that can come alongside them and can bring their strengths to bear so that the sum of the group is greater than the individual components of each member of the team. Now, let's fast forward to Exodus chapter 7, verse 20. Notice this. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord had commanded. He, we're talking about Aaron, raised his staff in the presence of Pharaoh and his officials and struck the water of the Nile, and all the water was changed to blood. Now, earlier in this particular chapter, God had instructed Moses and Aaron to go do certain things, but Aaron was given the lead role, and he was to take the lead as the senior leader, as the older brother. He was going to model the example of leadership first. That takes us to our second leadership insight of the day. Good leaders equip the leaders in training to learn to lead by demonstrating what it means to lead themselves. So what do we see in this particular example? In the initial series of plagues that we see brought by God onto the people of Egypt because of the stubbornness of Pharaoh, as we read in Exodus, we find this. Aaron led using Moses' staff to perform the work that was required. And in the first 3 to 5 plagues that we see, of the 10 plagues that hit the land of Egypt, we typically see Aaron in the lead role in those initial plagues coming to pass. Moses was there in a support role, but he was not leading in that moment. So here's the lesson. Seasoned leaders will initially take the lead. They will allow those who are in training that are going to become leaders of their own at some point an opportunity to first watch and learn. One of the things I've heard Dr. John say often is, I will lead and you will watch. And then I will lead and you will lead with me. And then you will lead and I will watch. And then you will lead alone. And then you will begin to teach someone else to lead. That is the leadership model that we see bared out here in Scripture. And I wanted to point that out as we're going through today's lesson. Now, let's jump forward to Exodus chapter 9 and have an opportunity to see the second part of this. Exodus 9, verse 10, notice here, so we're talking about Moses and Aaron together. We've moved beyond Aaron taking the lead and Moses watching, being in a support role, and now they are co-leading together. Moses and Aaron took soot from a furnace and stood before Pharaoh. Moses and Aaron tossed that soot into the air, and festering boils broke out on the people and the animals. So what do we see there? We see Moses now stepping into the opportunity to also co-lead with his brother, and that brings us to the third leadership lesson and leadership insight of today. Leaders in training, once they have had an opportunity to see what effective leadership looks like, have an opportunity to work alongside their mentors, and working as a team, they lead together. Now, we saw that in the scripture that we just read, and if you go back into chapter 9, 10, 11, and even chapter 12 of Exodus, you see that process continuing. Moses and Aaron working as a team to accomplish what they knew had to be done and to follow the instructions of God, their ultimate leader and mentor, and doing what they had been instructed to do. So the leadership insight for you is this. A good leader, after a period of time, when they believe that leader in training is ready, is going to give that leader in training a hands-on opportunity to co-lead with them and to develop that experience and to learn from hands-on actual leading so that one day they can lead in the event that mentor is no longer there. Now we see that played out in Exodus chapter 10 and 11 and 12. Notice here in Exodus 10 verse 22. So Moses stretched out his hand towards the sky, and total darkness covered all of Egypt for 3 days. Now, Aaron is still there, but notice that Aaron has moved to the background. Here, the seasoned mentor, the older brother, the one that initially started leading as Moses watched, and then co-led alongside with Moses, and together they led. Now Moses has stepped into that primary leadership role, and you see Moses being the predominant person taking action starting in Exodus chapter 10 and moving forward into chapters 11 and 12. That leads us to our final leadership insight of the day, and that's this. Good leaders replicate themselves in the lives of other people. And once they are ready to lead, that mentor releases them to lead on their own. And we see that, as I just pointed out, in these final plagues of Egypt, Moses led the interaction as Aaron, his mentor, his leader, trainer, observed and stood to the sidelines. He was not as actively involved as he had been in the first three plagues where he took the lead. He was not as actively involved as when he and Moses were co-leading in the plagues in the middle. But as we get to the end of the plagues in the book of Egypt, in those first 12 chapters that we read about, we see Moses stepping into his ultimate role as a leader, having been released by his leader, Aaron, to lead. So our leadership insight for you is this. The pinnacle of good leadership, the pinnacle of leadership in general, if you've read Dr. John C. Maxwell's 5 Laws of Leadership, the pinnacle of leadership is what? Replication. It is having the opportunity to replicate your leadership ability in other faithful men and women who will one day take your place so they can add your collective experience, knowledge, wisdom, and insight to their own and continue to lead well in your absence. So the pinnacle of good leadership is this: preparing other people so one day they too can lead and lead well on their own. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed today's leadership insights from the Bible as we've had an opportunity to pause for another Words of Wisdom Wednesday. If you are a fan of leadership and you enjoy leadership teaching, whether faith-based or just general leadership concepts, let me invite you to 2 of my video channels, YouTube and Rumble. The channel name is the same, Be a Black Belt Leader. My podcast appears each Thursday on Spotify and other podcast channels. It's the Black Belt Leadership Podcast. Now, if you are a person of faith and you want to learn more about the Bible and the leadership lessons in the Bible, let me invite you to my website, beablackbeltleader.com, where you can go to the courses section and you'll find an opportunity there to subscribe to a free email series I'm happy to send out to you called the Top 10 Leadership Lessons from the Bible. 10 unique characters mentioned throughout the scriptures, and we have an opportunity to learn a leadership insight from the life that they lived. And while you're at my website, beablackbeltleader.com, let me encourage you to take a look at all the other content we have available. There's a number of free pieces of content that are available, courses, an opportunity for you to listen and learn and to interact, download worksheets, go through courses and other trainings that are available. And there's also paid content that is much more in-depth than what you would get in the free teachings. And by the way, if you want to be a better leader, let me mention my book, Black Belt Leadership 101. It's available at beablackbeltleader.com, or it's also available on Amazon. $17.99 is the retail price of that book. You'll also find on beablackbeltleader.com a master class that I've put together based upon the book, 10 video training modules, 1 module for each chapter in the book as we talk about the 10 character qualities of black belt leadership. Each training module has 5 videos, so there's a total of 50 training videos that are a part of this session. There are 11 downloadable worksheets, and there's 50 downloadable audio files that you can download, and the audio of each video lesson and have that to listen to in perpetuity. Now, that masterclass is also available on beablackbeltleader.com for $497. Now, while you're there, let me also encourage you to check out all the social media channels where Monday through Friday, we're adding tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do as you discover, develop, and deploy your own black belt leader within. By the way, I have a weekly newsletter that also goes out on Substack, and you can subscribe to that free of charge while you're at the Contact Us section of beablackbeltleader.com. And with that, I want to say thank you for joining me for this Words of Wisdom Wednesday as we've taken another look at leadership insights from the Bible. And I love to leave you with this. Don't be a leader, be a black belt leader, and live your life with black belt excellence. I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.